Crimson Desert might be one of the most ambitious RPGs in years, but that also means it might not be for you. Should you actually even care about Crimson Desert? So the goal today isn't about hype or criticism, it's figuring out, is this game even for you? We're going to break this down going through combat, puzzles, some of the emergent activities that you'll be getting into, loosely talking about the progression system, and going into the overall depth of the game, because this game sits in a weird place between the traditional AAA RPG experience and a lot of the systemic depth of an MMO style of system. Because previewers have consistently described the game as overwhelming, but overwhelming in a good way. And this is one of the biggest things about this. The game has huge scope, tons of mechanics, constant discovery, but this also means that the game is not going to be for everyone. And by the end of this video, you should hopefully know if this game is going to be a day one experience, a wait for reviews game, or one that you skip entirely. And that's the real focus here, is pulling out that information so you can make the educated guess for your own wallet. So let's start with the part that you'll experience every minute that you're playing, the combat. So this is a subject that I've talked a lot about, and the combat is, on a surface level, surprisingly simple. I think a lot of people have seen a lot of the gameplay and thought that it's going to be overly complex, but this preview event confirms a lot of the stuff that I've been talking about. I played the game before at PAX West, and you have just a lot of the simple mechanics that we already know: a light attack, a heavy attack, a dodge, all the stuff that we've typically played in RPGs of this ilk. But there are simple modifiers to this. Holding the same button that is a heavy attack down causes a more elemental heavy attack. Maybe using right bumper and left bumper causes a defensive glint of your weapon, but holding them down will cause a charge and a slash. So the inputs for the game are not overly complex because you have very simple ones that you're used to. And the complexity comes from the contextualization of those abilities and chain those mechanics together, which I think is kind of the soup of what we would want in a combat system, something that is more akin to a fighting game where we have to learn elaborate combos or mechanics, but something that is more accessible and more easy to approach in the same way that we get with an RPG. So sprint attacks, grapples, throws, executions, environmental interaction are all of many of the hallmarks of the Crimson Desert combat experience. And it's kind of crazy because you can get almost like a level of Jedi with this. Like you can completely splinter apart a tree and then use the magic mechanics of the game to then throw that tree at someone. So in this, there's tons of chaos, and this chaos is what creates a lot of the kind of stimulus overload of the game, a lot of the overwhelming mechanics of it all. Because you have magical abilities, elemental attacks, martial art style of combat on top of your actual weapon style of combat. So all these things layer together. It's kind of like if you enjoyed, let's say, the physical combat system and the freedom of Dragon's Dogma 2, sans, of course, the pawn system. This is going to feel very similar. You're going to have something more aligned with that when you do have those combo systems that do open up as you go through the game, but you have more abilities attached to your character, more environmental interaction, and more overall spectacle. I think that's kind of a big thing here, is that a lot of this creates a very beautiful cinematic way of going through a combat system. But the biggest concern here in this section is not necessarily the complexity of the combat itself, but it's the actual control complexity. Some inputs do overlap, and depending on the context, this can be kind of confusing early on. Maybe it's right bumper and X, or right bumper and left bumper, or right bumper and B, but holding that right bumper and B does this and that. So that's what I mean, is the contextualization of those inputs is going to be complex, and it's going to be the thing I think really creates a hang up for people when it comes to this combat. So the combat might feel overwhelming at first, but once players really understand the basics, most of it really starts to click. And this is something that we've seen from previewer to previewer, is that at first blush, they're like, oh, what's going on here? But as they got just a little bit more time, and most of the previewers only had 6 hours to play, they really started to click with it and learn that control scheme. But it is, again, going to be that initial point of inertia. But the combat isn't the only systems players will have to wrap their head around. There's a lot more of a, I'd say more of a conventional system, but one we haven't seen portrayed like this in a long time. And that is puzzles. It's weird to have a discussion about a game that is coming out and have a discussion about puzzles. Like I think of playing a game like a Legacy of Kain, any of the Soul Reaver 1 and 2 games, or Legacy of Kain Defiance, which just got a remaster. Those games had really fun and elaborate puzzles. And a lot of them, you kind of just had to blindly grow up your way through it. A lot of the more modern gaming mechanics when it comes to puzzles, it's a lot more of a put this thing over to this thing and they're both going to glow and you just know where you're going to attach everything. It's a lot more of a let me hold your hand through this puzzle and a lot less of a struggle. Now, if you like the struggle, this is something that you're really going to be taking part of in Crimson Desert, because there are a lot of very difficult puzzles. And those puzzles are part of the game's progression system in the Abyss. You go into the Abyss, it's kind of like a dungeon puzzle dungeon. You go through a bunch of little puzzles, and then these will unlock a little Abyss artifact or cube, which is then used for the progression system, which we'll talk about in a little bit. But the puzzle system is a big part of this game. And if you want a game that feels more like a constant action game, less like a Zelda-styled puzzles type of philosophy and way of overcoming obstacles, it's just not going to stick for you. And I want to be transparent about it because so many previewers have really brought up how prevalent those puzzles are. In my playthrough of the game, I didn't have any puzzles because we weren't playing through that portion of the game. So, and this is just in the first area, in the first 6 hours, plenty of puzzles, lots of difficulty. So you would expect those to scale over time. So being transparent about that, I think, is pretty key to understanding whether or not Crimson Desert is going to want to sweep you off your feet or make you kind of give pause and wait to see what that puzzle complexity is like. Now, outside of combat and puzzles, though, the world itself is doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And that is in all of the emergent activities. One of the things that has been prevalent through pretty much every single previewer has been about those emergent level of activities. A lot of this footage that you're seeing here comes from my YouTube soul brother. I mean, Fighting Cowboy. A lot of people have said that I sound like Fighting Cowboy. He is not related to me. He has way more hair than me. But even him in his preview, he said, you know, this feels like I'm playing an MMO, a massive multiplayer online game. It feels like there's so much to do and almost to the point that it is overwhelming, but the game does layer it pretty well at you. You can go do fishing. You can do lots of NPC requests. You can rescue a cat, and that cat ends up becoming a companion. And once it's a companion, it will then loot for you and you can level up the cat. That's just something that's completely away from the actual main story quest, or MSQ, for those of you that have played like Final Fantasy or something of the sort. So you can go and clean chimneys. You can chase rumors around. And I think that this is something that we've seen akin a lot of the older CRPGs. For those of you that maybe have played like an Ultima style of game, that is kind of how you played through those games. You stumbled through them by listening to rumors and hearsay. And if you liked the world interaction of a Witcher 3, where you're investing in a lot of little nothings, right? You play Witcher 3 and you go through, oh, I'm in Skellige and I'm doing this quest that doesn't really do anything. It's not even actually a set side quest. It's just a kind of a little event. Those are the kind of interactions that really make up, I would say, the lifeblood of Crimson Desert. It's really said that you could go ahead and put however many hours into the story, but you could get lost on hundreds of hours of tangents on doing something like animal husbandry for your farm. There's so many layers of complexity is what I meant to say. So if you prefer a tighter narrative, something where you're a little bit more on the rails, you don't have this big sandbox to drop into, then this is something that's really going to push you away. And it's worth, again, giving you that transparency to know that the emergent activities are really one of the biggest driving forces of this game. And a lot of those activities feed into the next system, the progression. So we're going to pop here into this fancy format. This is, again, Fighting Cowboy's preview video. I strongly encourage you to look at it. Crimson Desert preview impressions after 5 hours hands-on. I'll put a link in the description. But what I want to show you here, and there's people that have gone through this in a lot more of a fine-tooth comb, but I just want to quickly give a once-over, because the progression system for this game is not like your typical style of fill up an XP bar, you fill up that XP bar, and you get levels, and you go ahead and progress through those levels, etc. This, as you can see, if I just take a look over here at Stab, my computer, my screen here is kind of blocking a little bit of it, but you can see it says consume stamina, how to use, quickly thrust forward. Now, if I kind of skip a little bit forward here, we go a little back. I'm just going to nudge forward. And let me go ahead and press this button to hide my webcam. You'll see that this says acquisition requirement, Abyss Artifact 1, or you can learn through watch and learn. So the, that's going to come back online. Boom, look at that, lights, the future. The actual progression through the skills in this game is not locked behind filling an XP bar. It's playing the game and discovering things. So all these emergent activities push you through this progression system of almost an overwhelming amount of skills and different ways to apply those skills and use those skills. So I think it's pretty pertinent, and I think it's pretty useful to see that this progression system isn't just locked to a static XP bar. It is locked to playing through the system that we just mentioned. And if that system I just mentioned isn't something that's going to tickle your pickle, then this is going to be something that you're going to end up getting frustrated with. But you can see that there are clearly so many options in how this whole thing kind of looks, right? Like we have a tree that's green, that's red, and another one that's blue. So those little tiny options here give us so much to kind of unfold. And I don't know what all those are. I think green is mobility, red is more elemental focused, and blue might be more actual combat. That's total conjecture. I do not know. But that progression system is key. And there is more to this progression system. And they've said, hey, it's locked to the narrative. We don't want to spoil it for you. You'll have to find out more. And there's more abilities and such that are outside of this skill system that are, again, locked to that progression. Now, with this whole thing, you also have the way that your quote unquote housing and other mechanics work. And those mechanics create the overall depth for the game. The word previewers keep coming back to is density, overwhelming. Those are the two big ones that are really kind of kicked around a lot. There's a lot of systems here. We talked about combat mechanics, there's puzzle mechanics, there's world activities, there's crafting and camp management, which I haven't even gone into. I have a whole video on it, but there's exploration and physics interactions. There's a companion system. You rebuild the faction that you're a part of, the Gray Mains. All these things create this depth that is outside of even the story. Remember, this is only 6 hours, depending on the previewer, of hands-on experience. Many of them played at a kind of very first portions of the game, and then they were jumped forward a little bit to talk about what does that end game look like? And Crimson Desert is one of those games where it gives you tons of ability, then kicks you in the ass, makes you restart from nothing. So most of this playtime comes from exploration and side systems, not from narrative, and not from any kind of linking portions of those narratives. Any progression that's linked to them is what I meant. And some previewers estimate that the game is going to be in excess of 100 hours. You can very easily lock yourself into a system that doesn't contribute to the main quest. Hey, you want to go do the faction system and really play heavily into building your base out? Then go ahead and do it. It's going to log you hundreds of hours. You want to get lost in animal husbandry and just have like a crazy farm where you're breeding tons of things and you're using those then for your crafting materials? Go ahead and do it. It's going to take you hundreds of hours. So if you're looking for a game that is that more on the rails experience, I look at like a Baldur's Gate, and that Baldur's Gate is a very nuanced narrative, right? You're walking straight forward, and you do have little detours you can do for little side quests. And the narrative of those detours is really like the juice of the game, but it's not an open world. It's not a sandbox. The strength of this game is the risk of this game, and it is the depth and the breadth of all of those mechanics we've talked about thus far. Which brings us to our question: who is this game really for? And you should probably care about Crimson Desert if you enjoy system-heavy RPGs. Games where experimentation and discovery drive the experience, not set builds with like a set experience rate. And that's something to really kind of stand out here, right? This is a system-heavy RPG versus kind of your conventional style. So if you liked an open-ended combat and world interaction system like, say, a Dragon's Dogma 2, this will appeal to you, especially too, if you wanted the idea pushed even further and you wanted more out of Dragon's Dogma 2, this is really something that's going to strike home. If you enjoy wandering through worlds full of small discoveries, similar to the Witcher's side stories and the world texture of that game, a Red Dead Redemption kind of comes to mind as well, this is really going to strike home for you. You might not care about this game if you prefer story first RPG with tight pacing, where the narrative kind of guides you through every step of the experience, and the experience is that story. Take a look at some of the more modern CRPGs, Pillars of Eternity 1 and 2, Baldur's Gate 3. Those games are so narrative driven. Yes, they have side quests, but the side quest is kind of just a nice little morsel on the big overarch of that main story. You might just bounce off if you just don't like puzzles. Maybe you really absolutely hate the Uncharted series, and if you see a puzzle, you throw up. I don't, but still, the people they like that exist. Or You don't like games with complex control schemes, like a fighting game. And again, when I say like a fighting game, don't get intimidated. I'm terrible at fighting games, and I was able to play this game without any issue. One of the biggest things that I think a lot of people are going to be hung up on, though, is how is this going to perform on console? A lot of people have said, I have yet to see any console footage. I will tell you, when I played the game at PAX West, I played on an Xbox. And keep this in mind, preview versions of games are usually highly optimized for the preview event. So, hey, it's like this one set level, we can optimize it so this will always run at 60 frames per second. So my experience was positive, but that again is a different portion of time. That was in August, right? The very end of August. And we're what, here, March 5th at the recording of this video. So take that with a grain of salt. That's 7 months ago at this point. So they have said that there is console footage that is coming, but it's the biggest question mark that keeps people in a mode of cautious optimism. I'm excited for the game, but there are some questions that I do have about that game, about the game's stability and performance long term. A lot of people have said, hey, this probably is not going to be as fun to use on a controller. I didn't have any problem playing it on controller, but some people have said they'd probably prefer a mouse and keyboard as a result. And I think another thing is that people need to be honest with themselves. Are they ready to invest hundreds of hours in an RPG? If you're not interested in that, that is probably something that's going to be a huge deterrent to you when it comes to Crimson Desert. So Crimson Desert might not be for everyone, but if the systems come together the way that they appear to, it could be one of the most ambitious RPGs that we've seen in years. That's one of the things that we keep seeing. Where is the catch? And it doesn't really look like there's a catch. We'll have to see how the reviews land. The review embargo is the day before the game comes out on the 19th. So the 18th is when we'll start to see those reviews. So be on the lookout for those coming. But thank you so much for watching here today. Feel free to let me know in the comment section below. How are you feeling about Crimson Desert? Are you going to be picking it up? Are you going to be skipping it? What excites you? What kind of creates a question mark in your head? We've got tons of content coming your way. If you've not yet pre-ordered the game, please only pre-order if you're 100% sure you want to get the game. Otherwise, just wait for reviews or wait for more content, whatever it is. But you can use the link below in the description to my Fanatical store. I get something like a 7% commission. Yeah, that's it. And you get a 15% discount. I was like, who gets 15 in this? You can also check out my merch store where you can buy the same shirt I've had on for the last 4 videos. And also don't forget to check me out on Twitch. Lastly, always, guys, don't forget to like, comment, or subscribe, as each one of those things helps me out in a huge way. But as always, thank you so much for watching here today. Have a good one and take care.